you for joining another episode of The Last Line. As we know, we are in a political season, and both political parties have launched their manifestos, in which we have seen very promising policies on women empowerment. Today, we will be discussing the issues surrounding women, most importantly, women empowerment and inclusion. Sosi, what is your take?
So, like you rightly said, women's empowerment or empowering women has taken center stage in the 2024 elections. But we first need to understand what the concept of empowering women actually means, because there are various angles to it. When you talk about empowering women, you're first of all talking about political empowerment, you're talking about economic empowerment, and there's the social cultural empowerment of women also. Political empowerment is giving women a seat at the table. And like I said, if you want to talk about empowering women, especially in this election, you've got to review the track record of the people that are making those promises. When it comes to political empowerment, the NDC has made a lot of strides in giving women a seat at the table. In this particular election, the NDC has nominated, a formidable woman, a competent woman, Professor Naana Opoku as a running mate to the flag bearer. You've also got right from 1992 efforts to give women a seat at the table, educating women, making sure that they are ready enough to participate in our conversations, political conversations among others. And then you've also got economic empowerment. How do we make sure women have the capital to be able to participate in our economy? And then social cultural empowerment also. So that is the concept of women empowerment. And you've got to look at the concept holistically and then also assess which of the political parties is making a lot of effort to deal with the issue. But to wrap up on that, I think that in this election, the very topical issue beyond political empowerment has become economic empowerment of women, because constantly we're seeing a lot of women who are having challenges accessing credit from our lending organizations and companies, and that's the topical issue in this election.
So talking about that, the NDC has the Women Development Bank policy, and then I've seen that the MPP also has the Women Empowerment Trust Fund. Now, what is your...
And so I think I want to continue from where my brother stopped. So the political empowerment of women, the NDC comes to the table with the nomination, two-time nomination of Professor Naana Jane Opoku Agyemang. It is only the NDC that walks the talk. When we talk about women empowerment, when we talk about inclusion, it is only the NDC. Then again, the NDC is proposing the Women Development Bank. I'm sure we'll look at it shortly. That would give women, women-owned and women-led businesses very soft loans with flexible payment terms. We all know the challenges of women when it comes to not having capital to access some of, not having collateral to access capital, not having, the wherewithal to run, of course, business, the challenges of the business terrain. The Women Development Bank is not only promising the capital, but is promising the support system so that when these monies are given to women, they are better supported to make good use of the money. They expand businesses, they create more jobs, they have the economic independence that, of course, we all so much need.
Now, not to cut you, but don't you think that some people argue that there are the traditional banks that take care of this? How different is this bank going to be from the traditional banks?
And so you see, the traditional banks are now running an interest rate of almost 40%. In this very Women's Development Bank of the NDC, it will be very soft loans, loans with interest below the market rates as we have now. And then the payment will be more flexible, coupled with, like I said, the financial support, the tailor-made support, business support services that women are promised. And it's not just women-owned businesses, women-led businesses would also. In our part of the world, we have many women-headed households. People think that, well, so it's always a man leading the home. No, we have many women-headed households. We have many women-led businesses and women-owned businesses. Beyond that, the challenge is the capital to expand the business, and sometimes the capital to start the business. And so this is what the NDC is promising. I think that the NDC stands tall, but maybe I'll let Noah have his take, and then it will come back to Delmo.
Yeah, so I think, interestingly, the 1990 constitution that ushered in our Fourth Republic, has as its preamble the creation of equal opportunity for all persons. But I think in the operationalization of the 1992 Constitution, one thing that we usually lose track of is the fact that it is good in its aspiration to create equality, but both genders are not starting on equal footing. We have a history that is laden with legacies of discrimination when it comes to ownership of property, especially land. So, in most of our customary practices, lands are held by the men because of that conception that if it's given to women, they will marry other men and take the property into other families. So, even coming into the 1992 Constitution era, we had a situation where most women who were coming into that era did not come in holding or owning properties. Okay, so when we have a bank system that requires hard collateral in the form of fixed property to assess loans, you are basically counting women out of that assessment of loans. So to create equal footing, there is the need to target women and, as now rightly mentioned, provide tailor-made solutions to address this problem that we have identified. And I think that what the Women Development Bank by the NDC is going to address is make women businesses more viable in the sense that with these credit facilities, women both at a very low level, that's those who are doing very small or menial jobs, can easily have startup capital to start such businesses. So if there are women who are currently unemployed, some of them need small amounts of money, sometimes just 1,000 cedis, just 500 cedis, to start some tabletop business. This is a ready-made opportunity for women to access, other than going to the traditional banks where maybe they would need to provide collateral that they do not have to access these loans. But beyond that, I actually think that the NDC's policies focus women in a very interesting approach. Some policies need to focus on women empowerment. For example, if you look at the Women Development Bank we are speaking about, and then you also look at the Ejumera policy that the NDC is pushing. Currently, there are about 90% of women find themselves in the informal sector. And most of the people in this informal sector, they do not have expertise on financial matters, financial issues, how to improve and expand their businesses, and all of that. The general policy by the NDC targets women who are in this informal sector. So aside providing a ready access to credit facility, how to use the money to improve your business, how to gain financial literacy is also being targeted in a different way. So I think when you look at these two policies, and even the sense that there is a signpost, which is Professor Naana Opoku, who represents women's ability to reach higher heights than what maybe we currently see around. Interestingly, it centers the issue of empowerment, and it shows how the NDC is interested and is focused on ensuring that women at least arrive at the same level that men are to pursue any aspirations that they may have.
How will you address critics who think that this policy is gender biased?
Well, so I don't think it is gender biased. Noah has said it all. Women come to the table just by how our 1992 Constitution is framed, not having much property, I mean, in their name. Very often than not, women go to banks and they can't access loans, and that leads to, people may think that is far-fetched, but very many of the abuses that women experience in their relationship is born out of the fact that I don't have that economic independence. If I want to detach myself from my partner, to be viable on my own. And so it's not just about the economic freedom. It's also giving them a certain body autonomy that, I mean, I can leverage on this capital and then make progress in life. So I don't think that is gender bias. It is just to create a fair playing ground for both genders, be it male, be it female. And come to think of it, if I am married to Sosi, and then I have capital from the Women Development Bank, I've expanded my business, my husband, has absolute peace of mind. And so by extension, everybody in society, has absolute peace of mind. So it is not gender bias. Then to add that, the inclusion of Professor Naana Opoku Agyemang, and then her strong advocacy that under John Dramani Mahama, 30% of appointment will strictly be for women. I think that also boils down to the political empowerment that Sosi mentioned. And then, so while the Women Development Bank is bringing the economic empowerment of women, the 30% appointment is also giving, that political empowerment of women, so that, of course, we also at the table, we know our issues better, and then we can better advocate for ourselves.
No, I think I even want to just jump in on that question. Even if the policy is biased, I think it is good that it is biased because of the history that we are coming from. Okay, so, and I think it's against that backdrop that the 1992 Constitution, for instance, provides for positive discrimination, or what some people may call permissible discrimination. So we need to realize that currently, men and women are not equal in a lot of circumstances. Like we are just discussing when it comes to assessing financial assistance or financial support, when it comes to owning property and all of that. If we want to seriously address this, we cannot adopt any approach than the one that targets elevating women to the same level that men are. And to do that, there must be more support or some focused support on women, which may seem biased on the face of it. But that is the only way we can actually address the issues that women face in the country. So I think that argument that the policy is biased is not looking at the policy from the issue that has been recognized that the policy targets in its enforcement. So I think that is what we need to have in mind when we are discussing this.
What Noah is saying, I think that both parties identify that empowering women is an important issue. So both of the parties,
and that's progress enough.
Exactly. So that in itself deals with the issue of potential bias. But more importantly, it is not a bias policy because, first of all, there must be an assessment of what the problem is. Now, in your attempt to create an egalitarian society, you need to ensure that you are creating equal opportunities for the people in your society. If you realize that there are more obstacles in the way of a certain demography, you need to design policy to remove those roadblocks. And that is what a policy like the Women's Development Bank, deals with. But like
having said that, let's go a bit into the policy specifics of this bank.
So what we know about this policy is that this is going to be a specialized bank, which is going to be providing access to credit to women who we know largely exist within the informal sector. Now, they are the ones who are largely operating the small and medium scale enterprises, right? So women will be able to access loans at very low interest rates from this bank. And at this point, I want to do the juxtaposition with what the NPP is proposing. If you look at the Women's Trade Empowerment Fund the NPP is proposing, in my personal opinion, it looks like an afterthought. It looks like a response to a flagship policy of the NDC. The reason I say this is you observe from the NDC a party that has a running mate who is female, who is championing the agenda for Women's Development Bank. If you assess Naana Agyemang's communication, it is the major thing she speaks on anytime she speaks on any platform. It tells you that it's a very important policy for the NDC. But assess the communication of the NPP, it does not really come up until somebody mentions the Women's Development Bank, and then they say that in response to that policy. But what they are proposing is that they said they've assessed the problem, and what they want to do is to set up a fund which will be dispersing, these funds to the traditional systems. And so you've got these the ordinary banks and then the rural banks, and the Women's Trade Empowerment Fund will have its resources being dispersed to those channels so people can have access to them. What the NDC is saying that you are creating a specialized bank, a women's development bank, which is going to be run by women. A bank with a clear target of servicing up to 1 million women. Indeed, at least 1 million women. At least 1 million women. What the difference between what the two parties are proposing is that one, I'm seeing the NDC and their proposal where they have a more comprehensive approach of dealing with the issue. Beyond the loans that are being provided, you also have the tailor-made services that are being provided to these companies, whichever services they may need. And then also financial education for these women-owned businesses and women-led business. I think that is very key. You can't just give the funds to the women and then leave them like that. You've got to give them some training also. But also, I think the MPP plan is more towards what the status quo is. If we are complaining that women are not getting money from the traditional sources, just setting up a fund and pumping those funds to those traditional sources does not solve the problem. But I've got a situation where a party says, I'm setting up a bank where, women's issues will prioritize. I think that is more comprehensive, that's more elaborate. And for me, it is more long-term because it's not just a fund we are pushing through status quo, but we're creating a policy that solves the problem.
And then, the Women Development Bank would also be, the bank itself will be manned by women. So from the board up until the least person manned by women. I've said and I repeat, women understand women's issue better. And so now we've advocated, give us the job, we will do. This is the opportunity. Women, we are about to be put to the task. This is our bank. Run it how you think that it promotes the interest of women. It actually takes away the disparities between men and women, and let's see how that goes. So board will be women, tellers will be women, and then we are supporting women-led, women-owned businesses. But let me also add that beyond the money, beyond the tailor-made services, beyond what Sosi has said, women are also encouraged that under this bank, show a certain credibility when you access the money. And so if you are giving one peswa to be paid within these and it promises to give very flexible payment terms, go by the terms of payment so that with time you are able to access more, your business expands. And
Head Prof. Jane said that there's going to be a training program for these women. So like you rightly said, it's not that they are just going to give them the monies for them to go and do businesses. They are going to be trained on financial literacy, how to manage these funds so that it doesn't go waste.
Yes.
And I think that is a very important thing because as Sosi and Na spoke, I just was thinking about some of the policies we have had over the years to address some issues that we have seen in society. And it seems over the years, our strategy to dealing with societal problems has always been give money and then let the people use the money for resolving that particular issue. And it has not benefited us in the best way that we could have anticipated earlier. What the provision of financial literacy, the provision of training, and like I said, the Agyemang policy, for instance, that is saying that it will allow those in the informal sector an opportunity to have a form of saving which they can use upon retirement. Okay, what these things, when you put them together, what I think they do is that they help women to overcome certain mistakes that they would have made from the word go when they start their entrepreneurial activities. Men have benefited over the years on the shoulders of those who went ahead of us by learning the mistakes they have made in business. We cannot have a bank in our current times that is providing financial facilities to women and then leave women on their own to make some of the mistakes that men made in the past and men in the current generation have benefited from. So the training deals with that specific issue. What the NPP's policy, the Women Trade Empowerment Fund, does not do is that it is relying on that old blueprint that has led us nowhere, which is give money to the people, leave them to fend for themselves, and then the government has done its job. But the government's job does not end with just providing the funds. The government's job is to help the people with the expertise to use the funds for the purpose for which the fund was actually created or provided. So that's why I think the NDC's policy, in my view, reigns supreme when you compare it to the NPP's policy. And clearly, you can see that, as Sosi mentioned, they could not just leave the gaping hole without talking about women, because women now form a major demography in the electorate that we currently have. So they just had to do something to respond to that. And that is why they came up with this. But the NDC's policy is very comprehensive.
Let me just say a quick one. One of the things I find quite fantastic about this policy is that it's a policy that emerged from the women themselves. So what we know is that John Mahama on his listening tour interacted with a lot of people, including women who are leading and running businesses. And most of them said it will be important to have a women development bank to support our activity. And so this policy is a result of that interaction with these, women business owners and all that. And these are the people who have assessed their own problems, and they're saying, provide this for us to help us. So beyond how comprehensive this policy is, it's a policy that's also emerging from the people themselves, upon assessing the challenges they go through, knowing fully well that we can't still run that system where you just throw money at us and expect us to pay back. But then you need a system where you've got an institution dedicated to this important demography, providing us with these soft loans, and then giving us financial education and tailor-made services so that our businesses can thrive. And I think this is really, really, a policy that is going to change the way business is done, especially on the women's side.
From all that you have said, it is clear that the NDC as a party has demonstrated its commitment towards women empowerment by putting women in the spotlight, by giving them the opportunity. So before we wrap up, what do you think Prof. Jane Naana's nomination as a vice presidential candidate would mean to the average Ghanaian woman?
Well, so this is what I think it means, and I would center my arguments in four areas. The first one is that Prof is a woman in her own right, an accomplished woman for that matter. And the fact that her nomination came the second time is an indication that indeed the NDC is not just talking about women empowerment and inclusivity, but walking the talk. The second thing is that Prof brings to the table some sanity of the office of the vice president. See, in recent time, we have seen how our vice president has carried himself, how the running mate of the NPP has carried himself. Prof, in all her engagements on the campaign trail, in the face of all the attacks, in the face of all the insults that any political party, any communicator, anybody has churned out, has actually maintained very seasoned speech. And for me, that is a good example to young women like myself and young girls. Now, her passionate advocacy for the issues of women is another thing that she brings to the table. Remember her distribution of sanitary pads when she was education minister. If you're in reproductive health, you get to understand how girls' non-affordability of these sanitary products can keep them away from school. For somebody who say that let's have a very aggressive approach to this. Let us provide the young girls with sanitary pads. Let us give them bank pads. It was under her tenure that I had bank pads, so that beyond what we are sharing, when they come to school, they can have some and stay in school. It is a critical way by which we are, bridging the gender gap, so that we won't have young girls stay home just because it is the time of the month. And for me, her advocacy also that 30% of appointment under her leadership will be for women. I think that it's for me, it's a brilliant idea, that it is not just about saying that women can do it, but now we are putting women to it to do it. And then we are setting indicators that 30% of women. And on the issue of the development bank, says that in the first 120 days of the office, this is somebody who has shown commitment. I will do it. These are the timelines, and not just the fact that I will do it. So for me, it is the fact that she has helped young girls to stay in school. It's the fact that she's advocating 30% of appointments as women. And it's the fact that under her leadership at the Ministry of Education, teacher absenteeism was the lowest that Ghana experienced. I think that she brings so much to the table, and it's an example for young women and young girls, and for the office of the vice president.
Yeah, so I think to wrap up, I'll also say that Prof being on the NDC's ticket, to me, my major interest is what it represents to young girls growing up. Okay, I always say that when you look at the early 1990s, the early 2000s, there was serious advocacy for young ladies to be in school. So if you put on your TV or radio, there were advertisements here and there talking about educating the girl child. Now, girls or ladies face problems that men cannot really appreciate. Men may provide a helping hand to women when they are going through these issues, but men cannot actually understand the pain or claim to even understand what women go through. You need a woman who has been through all of these challenges to tell you that, look, I have been through it. I have fought the fight that you are fighting now, and I have been able to arrive at where I am now. Look, I did all of these things, maintaining my sanity, maintaining my integrity as a woman. You don't have to cut corners to arrive here. You can actually climb to where I am, just being you and doing the right things and following the right mentors. And I think that is what Prof. Naana represents to every young up and coming girl in the country. So these ladies must look up to Prof, who is now a good example to them than any other person that they could have looked to or they could have been induced to follow by reason of we not having someone that represents who they want to actually be or what they can be. So yes, beyond the fact that she has achieved so much in politics, has achieved so much in academia, she is that person that young ladies can look at and be confident that whatever that they aspire to do, they can actually achieve it. But then again, I think one other thing we also have to say about Prof. Naana being on the ticket is that she and Mahama represents people coming from different backgrounds. Mahama can be seen as someone who has gone through the rudiments of politics, from assemblyman to the highest office of the land. Prof is coming from a background in academia. In a time that we believe that we need to reassess and re-strategize our educational sector, we need a president who has the political will to do that, and someone who is working with that president to lay out the right issues affecting academia, affecting our educational policies, so that we can come out with viable solutions. Look at what is happening with our education currently. Today is 3 years in SHS, tomorrow is 4 years. Today is double track, tomorrow we are thinking about something else. These changes create uncertainty, okay, and it does not lead to good success coming out from our educational institutions. So I think with the different backgrounds that they have coming together to share their different experiences, we can know that decisions that will come out from this ticket is going to be one that is informed, that is based on real issues that have been tested and tried, okay? And then we can have the confidence that these policies will work when they eventually are rolled out. So that's why I'm excited to have Prof on the ticket with former President Mahama.
Well, I think that in every political dispensation, you always have somebody who comes into the landscape and changes it. I mean, if you look at the United States, for instance, there came a time when Ronald Reagan showed up into the political landscape and made a case for conservatism. Now, he made a very brilliant speech about, the title of the speech was A Time for Choosing, where he eloquently expressed those conservative values for Americans to really buy into. In 2004, you also heard from Barack Obama, who made a very strong case for the Democratic Party in their convention. During Naana's unveiling or outdooring, that was the same sense that people got. A woman who was speaking about two key issues: sanitizing our body politic and giving women a seat at the table. And it's not just a matter of representation, it's about competent representation. This is certainly a person who is coming to the seat with some gravitas, with some brilliance, with some integrity, someone who knows the space and has done a lot of great things in the space. So Nana Opoku Agyemang's, addition to the ticket does a lot. But for me, also it's the fact that she has become the leading voice for this topical issue we are talking about, which is the Women's Development Bank. At every point when the NDC wants to project that policy, Nana Opoku Agyemang is the one speaking about the policy. And it tells a story. It tells the fact that this policy is very important to the NDC, because in politics, it's not just about what you feel is the actual thing, but how you also perceive it, how the party makes you feel about the policy. It is quite clear that the Women's Development Bank is not just one of those things that the NDC is proposing, but it is something that is going to take center stage in the next government. So it is very, very important that you have a woman who is a competent woman, who is, speaking for women, who is representing women, and also is taking very dearly that important issue of the Women's Development Bank. And for me, marrying the issue of political empowerment with economic empowerment is going to take our country very far, and it's going to give women a better standing in our society.